Lewis Award.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I too would like to start by acknowledging the Minister and the Select Committee. The subject matter is probably an area or a topic that none of us would like to discuss. And so the fact that we are today debating the merits of the Child Protection, Child Sex Offender Register Bill, or if my colleague Jacinda Ardern's SOP has supported the Child Protection, Child Sex Offender Government Agency Registration Bill, is, I was going to say, incredibly sad, because in preparing for my contribution today, I looked for some statistics. And I found a piece of research that's on the Department of Corrections website, actually, and it's called Reconviction Rates of Sex Offenders, 5-year follow-up study. And it looked at sex offenders from the 1st of January 2001 to the 31st of December 2003. And there were 1,100 male sex offenders, and of those, 63%, or 689, were child sex offenders. Which is pretty harrowing, actually. And then when I looked at some of the descriptions, I'll call them, on average they're 41 years old, 56% were 40 plus when released, 35% Māori, 51% European, 13% Pacific. But the interesting part for me, because this whole corrections research project was about recidivism. And so what they found of the 689 child sex offenders, 66% were first-timers. So that's 455. And of those, 19% were reconvicted within a 60-month period post their release. So I guess some people would see that as a good thing, but actually I looked a bit deeper into the actual numbers. It actually means that of the 455 first-time offenders, 369 are out there somewhere, and we don't know where they are. No one's monitoring them, and I actually can see the intent behind this piece of legislation when I look at figures like that, because actually a safeguard for us is when they stay in the system, which is incredibly perverse. But what's incredibly interesting too was of the recidivist offenders, so there were 234, 54% were reconvicted within that 60-month period, 126 people, but only 13 or 4% were reconvicted for sex offending on children. So I actually can see the intent behind this piece of legislation, so I'm getting up to support the Minister. I think that in light of some of the recent community, however, commentary on where some of these sex offenders are currently being placed, what I'm hoping is that we're not only going to have a register, but we're actually going to think through where people should be rehabilitated in the community. And I want to particularly pick up on a comment by the Minister who said that these offenders have to manage their urges. And so I guess my challenge back to the Minister, the Ministry, all those involved in monitoring these child sex offenders is actually managing them within a kilometre of a school where they can see children, where children actually in Māngare's case saw them, and from what we've heard, there were issues of masturbation because these offenders, or this particular offender, was getting off on seeing the kids. Is that appropriate? And there was an interesting ad in Germany actually in 2005, and it was, and I'll quote, "You are not guilty because of your sexual desire, but you are responsible for your sexual behaviour." And so I think the reality for some child sex offenders who are paedophiles, actually managing their urges, as the Minister said, actually is also a responsibility of the government. Because if we're going to put people back into the community and rehabilitate them, then we have to make sure that they're going to be in the best environment so that those urges actually don't pose a risk, not only for our kids, but for them.
Before I call Derek Ball, I am going to remind members, and I'm just feeling a wee bit conflicted now because of stated interests in this area, but I want to remind members that they should be debating this bill, not a second reading type debate on the causes or general statistics, not a discussion about where people should be living, but actually this bill has been accepted by the House at second reading, and all we're talking about is whether the details in this bill now fulfil the wishes of the House as expressed at second reading. Derek Ball.
Thank you, Sir. I'd just like to take a quick call to address a couple of things that have been said. First of all, by Alfred Nara, actually, in what he was saying, and he actually contradicted himself. He was talking about the scale of offending. First of all, he was talking about the scale of offending, but it's important to note that this legislation and this register has got nothing to do with the decision-making process about putting someone on that register. That comes before they are put onto the register. So if Alfred Nara wants to talk about the scale of offending and who should go onto the register and who shouldn't go on the register, that comes before any decision that is made about the role of the register and how the register is used. The authorities make that choice. But he contradicted himself when he agreed with what I was saying about there being no jurisdiction, that you can actually accurately rely on any research for any information that would be accurate to New Zealand. And within the same breath, he starts quoting research about overseas about what this register is for and why it shouldn't be made public. And if he would like me to go back onto the Hansard and quote it to him in the third reading, I'll be able to do that for him. The second thing I want to talk about, Sir, is actually one of the major concerns that New Zealand First has, and that's what the Minister said, which was talking about the police and what they would do with the register. And she literally said, quote, the police may well drop in and, quote, make sure they are living where they say they are. And we've heard from all of the opposition parties throughout the readings and the processes about the issues with the funding, the stretched budgets of the police as it is, the failure of the police at the moment to be able to adequately monitor those on electronic monitoring and the bracelets. And then we have an added task and duty for the officers to be able to stretch their budget even further to be able to go and monitor them. And the issue here is with this legislation, the main one is that it points to the fact that the offender themselves have to update their information. The offender themselves have to update their own information. They have to say whether they're moving, they have to say whether they're going to be in contact with children, where they are. And then the police have to react to that. The police have to react to that. So New Zealand First has got major concerns around that as well, Sir. I'd just like to briefly read out two submissions, Sir, because they highlight a couple of the points that New Zealand First is making. The first is about the need for the public to be able to be the eyes and ears for the police and the importance of that. And it states, Sir, if the success of this register is going to rely on just the police and corrections to monitor 250 child sex offenders released in the first year, followed by an extra 250 in year 2, up to 2,500 by year 10, then supervision is going to become non-existent due to sheer numbers. The task of policing is not the sole prerogative of the police. At any one time, there is a very high level of dependence on the general public to see and report what they see to the police for action. And that's why one of the major reasons why New Zealand First believes that the public need to be the eyes and ears in the general public for this register, Sir, and that means that register needs to be public. The second one, Sir, is actually from a victim of child sex abuse and her views on why she believes it needs to be a public register. I am a sexual abuse survivor, and from personal experience, I cannot stress the importance of having a child sex register available to the public. After what I had to go through, I would hate to think this could happen to another young and vulnerable child. Knowledge is power, and that saying couldn't be more true in this situation. If parents and members of the community are able to have access to those that pose a risk to children, then they can in fact make informed decisions around where they live, where to send their children, and where they deem safe. And those two submissions, sir, are the basis of why New Zealand First is putting forward an SOP to make the register public, and we hope that the Minister supports that.
Mr. Chair.
Stuart Nash.